Greetings, friend. What an honor to have you on the channel. For our first-time viewers, consider subscribing and sharing this with your circle. Your support is what keeps this going. Let me know which part of the world you're in. I read every single comment. And now, on with the show. I was no more than 3 feet away when it happened. Just 3. In a crowded ballroom, that kind of distance might as well be nothing, yet it felt like an ocean I couldn't cross. I stood near the buffet line, cradling a half-full glass of Merlot and balancing a paper plate stacked with finger food, while Miranda lit up the space around her, deep in conversation with Rayan and 2 board members. It was as if she'd stepped into a spotlight that had never once glanced in my direction. Rayan didn't need to be loud to command attention. He had that polished ease, tall, sharply dressed, the kind of smile that looked crafted with intention. He leaned in just enough to create intimacy, but always within view of his audience. "You'll have to excuse us if Monday mornings start running behind," he said, perfectly timed. "Turns out strategy sessions go longer when the wine is this good." The laughter that followed was easy, unforced. Miranda tilted her head back, glass raised, and spoke before anyone else had the chance. "Don't worry, he's just a friend," she said, loud enough to carry, aimed precisely at the ears that mattered. Her words hovered in the air like the trace of a signature scent. No one questioned her. No one looked toward me. But the unspoken language between them told a different story. His fingers lightly touched her elbow, not possessive but far too comfortable. She smiled at something he murmured just for her, the kind of soft laugh I remembered as once being mine. Her fingers brushed against his arm, barely a touch, yet enough to say everything without making a scene. She wore the silver cuff I gave her for our anniversary, 2 years back. I remembered her saying it was too delicate for corporate functions, but there it was, catching the chandelier light with every motion of her wrist, as if it belonged. I cleared my throat, quiet, intentional, just enough to make my presence known. Her eyes passed over me like I was a staff member delivering the wrong wine. I thought about approaching them, inserting myself with a casual question, a clever line, anything to interrupt the performance. Instead, I set down the plate, turned away, and walked toward the exit without a word. By the time I reached the street, the decision had crystallized. There would be no dramatic scenes, no appeals, no emotional parting shots. I was finished, with the job, the apartment, and the slow silence she'd let grow between us. Not after one last talk, not tomorrow. Tonight. Back home, I opened my laptop, typed out a resignation that didn't bother with a 3rd sentence, and hit send. On the kitchen counter, I left a single note. "If he's just a friend, then you won't need me to explain why I'm gone." I packed a small overnight bag, closed the door gently behind me, and drove off into the dark. The Harbor Light Motel was tucked between a blinking gas station and a pawn shop that always seemed open. Its neon vacancy sign flickered like it couldn't make up its mind. I pulled in a little after midnight, shut off the engine, and sat still for a minute before heading inside. The clerk didn't ask why I was there. He slid the key across the counter without offering small talk. That silence, unbroken and mutual, felt like the first honest moment of the entire evening. Inside the room, the carpet carried the scent of disinfectant and lingering smoke. I dropped my bag onto a hard plastic chair, reopened my laptop. My resignation email had already received an automatic response. "Acknowledged. Exit interview scheduled. No calls, no questions, no, 'We're sorry to see you go.'" The quiet only confirmed what I'd refused to admit. I hadn't mattered in a while. I reached into my bag, pulled out a notepad, and wrote 3 lines. No emotional calls. No searching for explanations. Stick to facts. Block out the noise. This wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. If something was happening between Miranda and Rayan, I wouldn't find the truth in her excuses, or in arguments played out across our shared kitchen. The facts would speak on their own. Dates, logs, patterns, receipts. I took a shower, put my clothes back on, and laid down on the stiff mattress. Sleep never came, but that was okay. For the first time in a long while, my mind wasn't spiraling with questions. I knew exactly what I needed to do. By morning, I was back in the city, not to confront her, but to tie off loose ends. I dropped my company badge into a padded envelope and left it with the front desk. By noon, I had returned to the harbor light. A half-drunk cup of coffee sat on the nightstand as I stared at the blank page of the notepad. If she wanted to call him just a friend, I'd let the evidence fill in the gaps. First move, our shared cloud account. Either she forgot it was still linked to me, or she never cared that it was. Since the beginning of the year, a flood of new photos had appeared. Candid shots from team retreats, rooftop cocktails, post-work networking events. Ryan was a constant fixture, always present, always nearby. In some, he stood a few feet away from her. In others, their proximity left almost no space at all. One picture, in particular, caught me off guard. A long dining table stretched across the frame, half-empty wine glasses scattered across it. Miranda leaned in toward him just slightly, her smile frozen mid-laugh as someone captured the moment. The caption? "Strong teams are forged after hours." Her hand was resting on the table, his lay inches from hers. It wasn't conclusive proof, but I wasn't looking for a confession. I understood implication. I could read subtext. I pulled up the shared team calendar next. Miranda's events were still accessible, clean, color-coded entries for meetings, trips, and client sessions. I began lining them up with the timestamps on the photos. Each one matched perfectly. The Denver trip, March 3rd to 6th, had been labeled Vendor Hospitality Dinner. I found a snapshot from that night, 2 wine glasses in the middle of a toast, no vendor in sight, just the 2 of them, alone. I began building a document, a sequence of dates, locations, and expenses. This wasn't a hunt for drama. I was creating a timeline, a file. At 10 p.m. sharp, an alert popped up on my screen. IT had sent a message. "Your access has been revoked, effective immediately." I didn't panic. I'd already gathered everything I needed. Leaning back, I reviewed the notes I'd neatly arranged. What I felt wasn't fury. It was clarity. This hadn't been an impulsive slip at a party. It was planned, calculated, woven quietly into itineraries and line items and casual reports. I tore the page from my notebook and slid it into my wallet. Proof doesn't belong in a shouting match. It's not meant for screaming or for slamming down on a kitchen counter mid-argument. Proof is leverage. 3 days later, I sat in a coffee shop 2 towns over, the kind of place that tries for peace but buzzes with overheard conversations. I chose a table in the back and sipped on a plain black coffee, letting the background noise wash over me. 2 women nearby were deep in conversation, their voices low but clear. I wasn't really listening, until one of them said Miranda's name. "She's staying at Rayan's place," the first woman whispered, "at least until her lease gets figured out." The second laughed. "Lease issues? Come on. They've been glued together since that Denver trip. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to see them. I didn't need to verify anything. I already had what I needed. But now I had something more. Confirmation, casually spoken by strangers who had no idea who I was. Their idle gossip aligned perfectly with the timeline I had already built. That night they went public, subtly, not with an announcement, but with an image. Rayan posted a photo of a wine glass lifted against the skyline. The caption read, "Late nights, right company, no tags." But Miranda's bracelet was visible. My bracelet. Its faint reflection shimmered on the curved surface of the glass. The following weekend, I saw them in person. It was at a branded event downtown, sponsored by her firm. They stood side by side at a booth, laughing with junior employees, engaging like everything was above board. His hand hovered at the small of her back. Familiar, claiming. For just a second, her smile faltered. Then it returned, wider, brighter, carefully rehearsed. She wore the look of someone who believed that if she performed well enough, the truth might stay hidden. I didn't approach them. I didn't say a single word. Public scenes are chaotic, and chaos serves no purpose. I turned and wove my way through the crowd. By the time I reached the street, I already knew what had to come next. If Miranda and Ryan wanted to maintain the illusion that this was all above board, that every trip and dinner was justified under company expenses, there was only one way to cut through the facade. Compliance. Not an argument, not a dramatic reveal, just facts, violations, policy language they couldn't dismiss or laugh off. I went back to the apartment on a Tuesday afternoon, the one window I knew Miranda would be tied up in consecutive meetings. The building manager handed over the spare key without a second thought. I didn't take much. A few shirts, my journals, the backup drive from the desk drawer. But in the laundry room, tucked behind a box of detergent, I found something I hadn't expected. A hotel invoice, folded into a dry cleaning receipt. The charge was made to a corporate card, marked as vendor hospitality, 2 entrees, 2 cocktails, 1 room. In the bedroom closet, a tote bag from a recent marketing conference sat half-zipped. Inside was a printed agenda, complete with a scheduled client dinner. The sign-in sheet listed just 2 names, Miranda Hale and Rayanne Clark. That was all the confirmation I needed. No statements, no admissions, just evidence. Back in my room at the Harbor Light Inn, I arranged everything on the bed. Transaction records, itinerary overlaps, time-stamped images, and entries from shared calendars. It had the sterile precision that audit teams respect. I called the anonymous ethics hotline, speaking with steady detachment. This relates to irregular expenditures during the Denver visit and multiple client meals. Cross-reference with Policy 4.2 on hospitality allowances. I'd recommend reviewing March 3rd through 6th. The person on the line didn't ask who I was. They simply replied, "Understood." 2 days later, an email from Jenna in compliance landed in my inbox. Brief and direct. "Your documentation has been received. We appreciate your thoroughness." That was the full extent of it. No questions, no drama, just the outcome I intended. I didn't want theatrics. For me, resolution looked like a machine running its checks and generating a response. I slid the receipts back into their envelope and filed it in the drawer. Miranda had made her allegiance clear. Rayanne had opted for indulgence. I had put my trust in data. Miranda was the first to reach out. "Can we talk?" Just the 2 of us. We agreed on a low-key bar on the city's edge, the kind of place where silence lingers and truths are harder to dodge. She arrived 5 minutes late, her coat draped over one arm, scanning the room like she half expected me to be gone. "I wasn't sure you'd show," she said, taking a seat. "I usually wouldn't," I replied, "but tonight felt like an exception." She leaned in, lowering her voice like this was a negotiation. "You vanished, Scott. No warning, no explanation. You just walked out." "I left a note," I reminded her. "Short, yes, but it didn't leave much to interpretation." Her jaw tightened. We were unraveling anyway. I called him a friend, in public. "That was before the frequent flyer miles, the expense reports, the back-to-back dinners," I said, cutting in. Her posture stiffened. "So this is payback?" "No," I said evenly. "This is documentation." We fell into silence. She broke it first. "Whatever version you've built in your head, this wasn't some scandal. We're adults. We made decisions." I gave a small nod. "Adults also follow regulations. Policy 4.2, for instance. Hospitality budget use. Odd phrase, really. Doesn't sound very hospitable when only 2 people are invited." Her mouth tightened. "You went through my private things." "I looked at what was left visible," I clarified. "The shared folders, your calendar, the trip outline." "You didn't exactly hide the trail." She started to respond, then stopped. Her confidence didn't crumble, but something shifted. A recognition, maybe, that the ground beneath her had changed. "You're not going to turn me into some kind of monster," she said quietly. I placed a $20 bill beneath my untouched drink. "I'm not assigning anyone a label, Miranda. I've just stepped away from mine." I stood, buttoned my coat, and left. She didn't follow. The fallout came faster than I'd anticipated. Within 2 weeks, the memo started circulating, discreetly but intentionally, reaching all the right inboxes: board members, high-stakes investors, strategic allies. Rayanne was put on paid leave while an inquiry began. Miranda's access badge was revoked before the day was over. She never told me. A contact from finance, someone I hadn't heard from in ages, reached out. "They're digging into 3 months' worth of expenses," he said. "Whoever submitted that packet laid it out clean, too detailed to dismiss." I only said, "That's what internal controls are for." Another week went by before Jenna contacted me directly. Her voice was crisp and formal. "Thank you for the materials. The review is in motion. No additional input is necessary." She paused, like she might break the script and say something human. But she didn't. And that was fine. I accepted a short-term consulting offer with a niche analytics firm. Lean team. No cocktail parties or team-building charades. Just work, straightforward and sincere. At night, I trained at a small boxing gym in my neighborhood. No pretense, no swagger. Just form, footwork, discipline. It felt real. One morning, I opened my P.O. box to find a package waiting for me. Inside the box was the watch I had once given Miranda, resting neatly inside its original casing. Next to it was a note scribbled on a yellow scrap of paper. "You were constant. I wasn't." No name, no further context. Just that brief message. I didn't keep it. That same weekend, I offered the watch to the Maritime Museum's charity auction. The very event where she'd once said of another man, "He's just a friend." A quiet loop closed itself then, silently and without need for words. By that point, it didn't register as heartache. It felt more like settling an old ledger, debits and credits finally reconciled. The divorce had been finalized earlier that spring. There were no explosive arguments, no court disputes, just signatures on a few dotted lines and a calm, practical division of the life we once shared. The conclusion didn't sting. It settled gently, like dust gathering on a shelf left untouched for too long. Roughly a month later, I saw her once more. The museum was hosting another fundraiser, this one focused on preserving the coastline. The invitation had come through my new firm, a subtle nod to steady, reliable work. Miranda stood near the main entrance, her hair tied back, her smile more reserved than I remembered. Our eyes caught. She gave a small nod. I returned it. We didn't speak. There was no need. I didn't linger. I wove through the crowd and made my way to the terrace. A few people stood near the railing chatting, only a few steps away, but I felt no pull to join them. That space wasn't distance anymore. It was a boundary I now chose for myself. Later, I walked back to my car, never once glancing behind me. The museum lights shone steadily in the evening behind me, unchanged, familiar. This had been the starting point for everything. But this time, I wasn't being left behind. I was the one walking away, by choice, in quiet, with the echoes fading, and nothing left to turn back for.